She was the OG blonde bombshell and the ultimate sex symbol of the 1950s, but as it turns out, Marilyn Monroe's most risque film scene was never actually shown to the public. Before her tragic death in 1962 at age 36, Monroe had been working on what would prove to be her final film, Something's Got to Give. Join us as we discuss this lost nude scene while speculating about what may have become of it. Facts First presents Marilyn Monroe filmed a nude scene that has never been seen. It was all her idea. According to photojournalist Lawrence Schiller, who was actually working on the set of Something's Got to Give, it was none other than Marilyn herself who came up with the idea of filming the nude scene. Schiller told Fox News in June of 2020 that Monroe was very excited about doing the swimming pool scene, so much so that she insisted it would be a good idea for her to emerge from the water with nothing on. Schiller was astonished by what Marilyn had told him. Reportedly, he replied to her by reminding her she was already famous, but if she allowed him to shoot the scene the way she suggested, she'd wind up making him famous as well. Schiller added that after his reply, she merely looked at him, giggled, and shot back by saying she could fire him in 2 seconds if she wanted to. Monroe may have been joking, but she was dead serious about the nude scene. In fact, according to Schiller, the 7-year itch actress let him shoot a series of photos during the filming of the scene. Because of her untimely death, the movie was never finished, nor has that nude scene been made public. But Schiller's photos from the set have survived and can be found with a quick Google search. For obvious reasons, we're not able to show you the ones that show off Marilyn's body, but here are a few of the more YouTube-friendly ones we can share. Several shots from that scene were released prior to the star's passing, effectively drumming up a massive wave of publicity for the film. The public couldn't wait to lay their eyes on a nude Monroe. Sure, some were claiming the film was more or less yet another example of a feature contributing to the moral decline of America, but you can bet that those same individuals weren't looking away when Schiller's photos came to light. She was fired. 20th Century Fox knew they were sitting on a gold mine after casting Marilyn Monroe to appear in their upcoming feature. Perhaps they thought it would help offset the $44 million they had just spent producing and promoting Cleopatra. That one was the most expensive film made at the time, and while it generally received favorable responses from critics and was the highest-grossing film of the year, it initially lost money. Strapped for cash and desperate for another box office hit, 20th Century Fox banked on the belief that Monroe would be their money-making sauce. The studio knew Marilyn had a reputation for being a bit difficult to work with, but then again, so was Elizabeth Taylor in Cleopatra. But they figured it was worth it to work with Monroe anyway. But just a month into Something's Got to Give's filming, Marilyn was fired from the movie. 2 months later, she was found dead of barbiturate overdose at her home in Los Angeles. As such, the film never got a chance to be completed, much less screened. The plot thickens. The story behind Marilyn's sudden firing deserves some mention. Monroe hadn't appeared in a film in more than a year before she was hired on for Something's Got to Give. She had recently undergone surgery to treat her endometriosis and have her gallbladder removed. She was fresh out of the hospital for drug addiction and depression as well, and obviously not in the best state physically and mentally to work. Because of illness, she had lost a great deal of weight. Reportedly, she hadn't been that skinny her entire life, but that didn't seem to bother the studio. According to a quote featured in the 1990 documentary Marilyn, Something's Got to Give, the movie's producer, Henry Weinstein, said that it didn't matter how well she performed, as all she had to do was, quote, look good, and she did. The first week of shooting, Marilyn called in sick with sinusitis. Evidently, the studio wasn't quite sure her sickness was legit. They assumed she was having pre-performance anxiety. Monroe had been offered $100,000 to appear in the film. The sum was only a tenth of what they paid Elizabeth Taylor for Cleopatra. They later claimed it was actually a bargain for the few days she was actually on set. Apparently, she wasn't even around when the Shah of Iran paid the studio a visit and toured the lot, hoping to see her. Marilyn had phoned in sick, but the Shah insisted on meeting her. Weinstein ended up picking Monroe up at her house, but she reportedly refused to go. The reason she gave for refusing was that she didn't even know what Iran's current relationship was with Israel. Weinstein then called up his buddy Max Nussbaum, who served as the, quote, rabbi to the stars, and he assured her everything was fine and it would be a good thing if she showed up to meet the Shah. Eventually, she came to set. But 2 weeks later, when Monroe started working, she had more absences that prevented her from coming in regularly. The rest of the production team did their best to do as much work on the film that they could without her, shooting scenes that didn't include her as much, but it was obvious that tensions were flaring. Even when Marilyn was on set, working with her was troubling. For the first time in her career, she was portraying a mother, something that was quite challenging for her given her prior history of having miscarriages. Because of this, she struggled to deliver her lines, even for a single scene. She kept flubbing and couldn't give a solid delivery. In the little bit of raw footage we've seen from the film, Monroe wasn't looking very put together. But then again, there was so much pressure being laid on her. Director George Cukor pushed her as far as he could, hoping to pump as much out of the actress as possible. Her co-star, Dean Martin, was a gentleman and afforded her a great deal of patience, but the rest of the crew grew increasingly tired of working with her. According to the documentary, Monroe drifted through her scenes in a depressed and drug-induced haze. The last straw. 4 days after she had returned to the set, Peter Lawford fetched Monroe from the Fox lot in a helicopter and flew her to New York, where she performed her infamous Happy Birthday, Mr. President bit in front of JFK. Monroe had obtained permission to attend the party, but Fox's chief production executive, Peter Levathes, had reportedly ordered her not to go. Cukor had also urged her not to attend the party, but Monroe wasn't going to let anyone tell her what she could or couldn't do. After her performance in front of the president, which, mind you, intensified the scandal regarding her and Kennedy's relationship, Cukor was enraged. So a few days after celebrating her 36th birthday, Marilyn was fired for, quote, spectacular absenteeism. Fox even went as far as to hit her with a $750,000 lawsuit for her willful contract violation. Monroe reacted quickly by sending Cukor a telegram begging him to forgive her. In response, the studio made the decision to rehire her after Dean Martin insisted he was unwilling to work with any other actress. A new contract was quickly drawn up, and Monroe was officially brought back on board to appear in the film. Sadly, before she had the chance to step back on set, her life was cut short. While the documentary, Marilyn, Something's Got to Give, showed us a little bit of the 9 or so hours of raw footage that had been sitting in the 20th Century Fox vault for decades, we've yet to see anything resembling a theatrical cut. And as far as the nude scene is concerned, it's safe to say the closest we'll get to seeing it is the photos taken by Schiller. Now it's time to hear from you. Which part of this story was most surprising to hear about? Let us know in the comments section below.